Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, where we explore the world of professional services consulting. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, each episode delivers expert insights, real-world stories, and interviews with top consultants to help you refine your consulting skills.
Hey, again, thanks for joining us today. And today we have Sara Lyons. Sara and I have become very good friends. We actually, I think, shared the first time a very good rosé. Did it turn out really good? Yes, on a wonderful evening in Chicago. So Sara, tell us, she's got a lot of experience in PS and a lot of interesting attributes of things she's gone through that others either didn't have to or didn't get to. But Sara, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I started my career over 20 years ago and actually kind of stumbled into consulting. It wasn't something that I was actively trying to get into. It's just my first job ended up being with a consulting firm and have stayed in it ever since. I've been in different industries, but always around data. I've been in master data management for since 2005, and have had an opportunity to be lucky enough to build several different teams. Teams here in the US and overseas. So have seen a lot of how just consulting in general has evolved and how trends in our specific industry have evolved, and seen how customers are evolving also and how their needs and expectations are changing. And it's very different than 20 years ago, as you know.
Yeah, and you've accommodated all those changes. Also, when I originally got into consulting, I thought I would only stay a couple of years, and well, we won't need to know how long that's actually been.
So there you go.
Well, Sara, you talk about all the things that are evolving, and there's always something that the industry at large is talking about. Right now, I think that big topic is AI, and really the questions being asked for everybody is kind of what does that mean for us? And I know you've got some thoughts on that. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think PS leaders, everyone right now is thinking, what does this mean for me and my team? And how do we need to change? How do we need to adapt? Are there skills that we no longer need? And are there skills that we need to start thinking about? My opinion is I don't think that there are really skills that won't be needed anymore. I think that we're going to find there are certain tasks that aren't required anymore. And there's going to be a shift in that direction, definitely. So like some technical or repeatable or process-oriented tasks. I believe that AI is going to be able to improve or eliminate those. I don't think that the technical skill set is going to be eliminated though. In my career, I've always worked on PS teams that are implementing software. So that's the lens that I'm looking at this through. So that's why I'll talk about technical tasks a lot. And my point of view is AI is going to make things easier on the technology and development side of things. Again, I don't think it means consultants can lose that skill because they're still going to have to answer follow-up questions, have follow-up conversations. What they're going to need to do is pair those skills with other soft skills that they might not be using as much today, so that they can still deliver technically, but also build skills that build a human connection, like emotional intelligence and empathy, that some consultants don't always think about.
Yeah, we talk a lot about consulting skills. That's what we call them. And they used to be called soft skills, maybe essential skills, but the ability to build a relationship with a client, understand them, drive them to success, bring their team along with them, anticipate what's going to happen. Of all the things you and I've talked about a lot, mm-hmm. I hear you saying those are going to become much more important as AI allows us to simplify some of the more technical, heavy things we used to reward people for heavily and pay them heavily for. Yeah. So that's a big transition.
It is. I was talking with someone the other day, and I was saying, again, I work with, software and technology teams, and you don't normally talk with a room full of developers about emotional intelligence and how to be more self-aware and really build a human connection. So it is a shift for some teams more than others, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, as those technical skills commoditize, right, you have to find this way to stand out and differentiate yourself, and it's not going to be based on your technical capabilities as much anymore. It's going to be on your ability to build that credibility with a client, that trust with a client, because what we're going to be asking them to do is no less daunting than it is today, but our ability to prove our credibility in the space and our right to actually do that with them depends on things other than just our technical capabilities.
Right. I think a question consultants might get asked now, or customers will consider, is what is this human going to be able to do for me that AI can't? And it's a very real question now that I think people thought it would come very far in the future, but it's here now.
Yeah, yeah. Even in the business we're in, we for junior consultants, partners and managers are asking themselves, it might take more time to give that to Jimmy because he's only been here a year, but I can get AI to do it. But Jimmy didn't learn, but I didn't have the hassle of having to explain to Jimmy the frame of reference, and so it is an interesting thing. But I love the idea that we're going to differentiate by driving outcomes. We're going to differentiate by those things that clients can't replace, right? And I also think that it's just plain lonely for client executives to go through transition, and having someone who's been there a few times as a guide to say, no, this is normal. That all your people are unhappy right now, and change management is normal. Yeah.
This is the right time to be unhappy. It's okay.
Yeah. If they're unhappy now, we didn't do it right. Which my wife used to say about our teenagers, but we won't go there. So how do you think this is going to affect, as your revenue goes up, your hiring plans?
We don't have any plans to change our team or anything right now. What we're really focusing on is how can we maintain the same business that we have with all these changes in AI. So we're really looking at it more from, what do we need to level up on to keep our same team makeup? And like you said, how do we differentiate ourselves from a chatbot now?
Yeah, what are you all investing in, or some strategies that you're trying to build out some more of these consulting skills? Have you put anything in place so far?
Yeah, we have. That's a good question. We've taken a really proactive approach, and we have actually built a curriculum for all of our consultants. Just kind of going back to basics, like you said, things that consultants used to get rewarded for a lot, these soft skills. We've built it's like an 8-week curriculum with different sessions, and we have a regular cadence with our team. All the consultants go through it, and we are focusing on things like empathy and emotional intelligence, even storytelling, just ways to really connect with the customer that we might not have. I'll say it this way, maybe we expect everyone does, but we haven't spent a lot of time talking specifically about it. So that's in place now, and everyone will go through it.
Yeah, and you only get what you inspect, right? You only get what you invest in, and that's really good. I had a junior consultant a few years ago tell a CEO he had a marketing message, and she was explaining why he can't use that. And I was amazed watching, and she's good, but her lack of understanding that he's in a different generation and he's the client and he's not talking to people in your generation, right? And that is, to me, empathy, to your point. That's not saying she's not right and he's not right. That's meaning meet him where he is, right? Why does that resonate with you as in it doesn't resonate to me? And we don't do that. Also, there's, which you touched on one of the other times, intellectual interest. Be interested in what their business is. Be interested in the nuances. Be interested in them. Be their friend, and they'll be your friend, if you will.
Right. I think you have to do that. And I've told some of our team this story, but I had a customer, years back, and it was a retail customer, and they had a loyalty program. So this was also when we were on site all the time. So I had lots of free time when I was there. And I would go into their store and I signed up for the loyalty program. I would like make a purchase and then come back and say, oh, I forgot to use my card. Will you add this? And just did all these different transactions so that I actually understood what my customer was talking about when they were talking about their pain points. And I think that's how one of the ways you can show that interest in them.
Yeah.
And start to build that trust and connection. Like they were surprised that I did that.
One of the things I used to do, and I don't do it so much anymore, I would buy stock in our clients, and I would buy their products, right? And I would like one time we were big HVAC company, and I needed to replace my HVAC. Got all their HVACs, learned all the complaints, learned all the journey, learned what the implement, and it helps because that's what they're fighting every day, their business. And you can differentiate. Just one of my children asked me after they'd gotten a job with a software company. She said, "Everybody's so smart here. How do you differentiate?" And I said, "Well, two things: be a better person, be their friend, and outwork them, and you'll be amazed that it's not that hard." So you're going to be transitioning people to more empathy and more. And are your project sizes changing at all yet? Have you seen that with the AI?
Not yet. I anticipate that it will slightly, but again, we're also looking at ways where we can keep the project durations the same by bringing more value in other ways, like by having more workshops, one-on-one, really understanding and explaining, like you said, leading them along the way where, okay, maybe technology will make a development cycle 4 weeks shorter, but we're going to share our experiences with you. And so we're still going to be there. It doesn't mean we're going to leave 4 weeks earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have a situation like that kind of right now where someone said, well, we're going to change some stuff. Doesn't that make the project smaller? And in actuality, in some ways, a project can't be made smaller. At some point, you just can't do anything. And Anthony, I was there with him, said, no, we're going to reallocate that time to stuff that makes you more success and more, that we didn't have time for before. And that's your point is we're still going to use that. We're just going to do it better.
Right. Yeah. They'll get a better return on their investment. Same amount of time, but you're getting more success.
Which again, as you said, puts the pressure on the people to be different than they were in a project 3 years ago. And I got to admit, I had a consultant say this to me once. We hired a consultant to our church, and he said something, and I always like watching consultants, right? He said, hey, once the church decides what it wants to be, people will leave. Because right now, everybody can imagine it being what you want it to be. But once it decides on a strategy, it's going to be something special. And I wouldn't be surprised as we all go through this, if some people begin to opt out of the PS job, because that isn't what I signed up for. I wanted to be this content expert that knew all the tech and was highly rewarded for it. And now I'm using, I heard one recently say, I don't want to use those are selling skills. They're people skills. They're people skills. So anyway, that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, change is hard.
Yes.
And some people won't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned your curriculum that you all have been a little bit out in front of developing and putting your team through. I don't know if you mentioned how long that's been in place, but have you seen any measurable results from that, or even anecdotes of the team behaving differently and getting different kinds of outcomes as a result of that?
We are seeing some anecdotes like that. Honestly, like for this year, we're not really like measuring or anything. That's going to start next year, but we have like a 60, 90-minute session every couple weeks to talk about one topic. And we'll always ask, share your experiences. Like, where have you been empathetic? Where have you been able to tell a story or something like that? Partly to get concrete examples to everyone else on the team, because not everyone's used to that kind of behavior. So right now we're really in like the sharing and information mode. But you see some people get excited, like when one person was able to use AI tools to enhance our existing documentation template. So, same thing we were just talking about. He was able to give more documentation in the same amount of time because he's got new tools now. So we'll just, we use Slack. We'll just share that on Slack. Like, hey, I just had a creative, innovative way. And that's also building a connection, because then the customer is like, wow, they went above and beyond for me, and are going to trust them more going forward. So we are seeing the change.
I love the idea of using the stories, because there's nothing that breaks down barriers better than, this is what happened to me. This is how we dealt with that. And stories always have, a good story always has a calamity and a hero, and people love that, right? And they have their own stories, and they'll open up. Because, clients are often put off by, particularly not the buyers, but the people in the project are often put off by the consultants, and put off by the change, and put off by feeling they're evaluated all the time. And, stories can really help with that.
Yeah. Storytelling. I actually was lucky enough. I was just at a conference a couple weeks ago, and one of the keynote speakers talked about storytelling and data. And he was making some comments that it's like, it, but you haven't really thought about it before. And he made a comment that people aren't going to remember the numbers, they're going to remember the story. And and that stuck with me. I shared that with our team. Like, you have to have the numbers documented and have the data to back it up. But when someone leaves your Zoom meeting, they're going to remember your story. They're going to come back 2 weeks later and ask you for the numbers.
Yes.
But it's because they remember the story.
And they cared to come back 2 weeks later. Right. Yeah, that's great. So kind of leave us with the one thought that you think that we should take away. And thank you so much again for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. I think bottom line is consultants are going to just have to adapt. And we always have. That's part of the job. So like we were talking about with what our team is doing, I think leaders are going to have to take this proactive approach and look at where their teams might not be flexing some of these skills that they don't every day, like the soft skills. When we're talking about AI specifically, my belief is the ones who will be successful are the ones who can leverage those AI tools to be more efficient and accurate on the tech side of things, but still build that emotional and human connection, because that's the piece, we kind of joke about it, that's the piece that AI hasn't mastered yet. And when I joke about it, I'm like, I said yet. We don't know what's coming down the road, but that's why we have to make sure that we are really excellent at those skills now, so that we can stay ahead of whatever AI comes up with.
Well, thanks so much, and we really appreciate it, and we'll be seeing you again soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
So, what I love about the talk with Sara, Sara always brings energy and positive, and but she's frankly looking at, and she ended us with, yet. It hasn't, I think of AI like a Pac-Man, if you know the old Pac-Man game. And it hasn't eaten into, consultative skills yet, or client management yet. But boy, it can sure wreak havoc through a lot of things that just a few years ago we had people doing.
Yeah, well, we've talked about it a lot. I think there's more upside than downside to it. I know why people are fearful of it, but every use case I've seen for it that supports the consulting industry only makes our industry more effective if you are thoughtful and deliberate about it, which means making sure that you're still investing in people to do some of those activities as learning experiences to get them to develop into somebody else that you want them to be later in their career. And then the second piece is making sure that you're doubling and tripling down on that thing that differentiates you, which is going to be your team's ability to build trust and credibility, because the technical skills become commoditized or table stakes.
Yeah, which I think the big firms that they compete with, is Deloitte going to implement this, or you for a SaaS firm? I think those firms have always, historically, very good at that, but even they're struggling now because of just the nature of not traveling together and multi-generations of, did I get coached well? Did really get coached well down. Yeah. So exciting, and we'll see Sara again, and I hope everybody enjoyed the session today.